Hello, this is Anthony. Let's walk and talk. So today we're going to talk about how your perception changes the past and the future. I'm going to give you some real life examples. Now, this is going to be a two-part video. So in the first part, we're going to talk about how your perception is shaped and what your perception is. In the second part, we're going to talk about how that changes the past and the future. So to start off with, what is your perception? Your perception is based on your programming. Now I say programming because some people are going to say your perception is based on your experiences, but again, as your experiences change and evolve through life, so does your perception. And most people have this perception that is based in that of ego. And what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is that most people carry more of their perception on ego based on a moral or ethical high ground. And what I mean, where I'm going with that is that things are viewed as good or bad on this plane. But I'm going to give you a couple examples, and we've talked about this in the past, as to why good or bad are strictly just a perception. So you can better understand that there is no good or bad, there just is. And so to discuss this concept, we're going to talk about two examples, okay? One example I was given by a mentor many, many years ago, and then I'm going to give you an alternate that's going to feel a little more real life, especially for those who exist in more of a Western culture. So, the concept of good or bad and why it's perception. You see, I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm not sure if I told this in the past, but the story is about a person who's going to be married. And as the wedding day approaches, this person has rented out this farm to have their wedding on. And as the day approaches and as the wedding day arrives, suddenly the clouds come over and it begins to rain. Now, you know, this is if you're the bride or the groom or part of the wedding party who planned it, this is a bad thing, right? And so you view the fact that it's raining as a bad thing. However, from another perspective, that of the farmer, the reason the farmer had to rent out part of his land is because there's been a drought. Because there's been a drought, he hasn't been able to fully utilize his land to grow crops, which is where he actually earns his living and supports his livelihood. And so for him, the rain is actually a blessing. It's a good thing. And when you look at life strictly from those two perspectives, then you suddenly begin to understand that two different perspectives, two different ideologies on what was good or bad. Now, we're going to make this a little more tricky so you can understand better how the ego utilizes the experiences around you to change and evolve your perception of good and bad. And again, why there is no good or bad, there just is. You see, we're going to go to a movie that's a world famous movie called Star Wars. Now, Star Wars came out when I was growing up, and especially the original one. You see it, and after seeing the movie, you leave the theater and you're like, I am part of the Rebel Alliance, because the way the story is told and narrated, the Rebel Alliance looks like it's the cool side to be on. It's the one that's most that attracts you most because the characters are all focused around that, and the movie itself, you know, dictates things like control and manipulation and good and bad, based in that aspect. The Rebel Alliance are more spiritual, and they're connected to nature or the Force, and they're able to use that in their connection with the universe and able to, in order to manipulate situations, and create positive outcomes, where the empire, the evil empire, is trying to control and manipulate based on a perception of power. And you see, what most people don't understand, especially in the States, especially if you're from the US, is everybody wants to be the Rebel Alliance. But the older you grow and the more that you understand community, society, countries, governments, and how things operate, including religion, you begin to understand that most things are actually the empire. And you actually, if you support any of those things, you aren't part of the Rebel Alliance. You're part of the empire. Now, even inside of those situations, in today's turbulent environment, people are going to go, well, I don't like the current president. That makes me part of the Rebel Alliance. Not necessarily. That just makes you part of the group that doesn't like the current administration. However, when your administration gets in, guess what? Nothing changes. It's all the same thing. Because in reality, there is no solution for the problems, because creating a solution for the problem then creates understanding, communication, improvement of life. It solves the problem, and without the problem, there's no conflict. And without the conflict, there is no separation. And without the separation, it's much more difficult to control, especially when it comes to outcomes. Now, I tell you all this because, again, there is no good or bad. There just is. And again, I point to that fact because even when you have a movie such as Star Wars, where the story is narrated in a way to make you attached to the characters of that movie, it's essentially programming your mind, your belief system, and your thoughts to say, this is the group that I resonate with, and this is why. However, when you look at the way you live life and you begin to look at things from the perspective of the empire, you see their perception as well. And their perception is, without control, there's not order. Without order, then you have chaos. When in reality, probably the closest connection to it is a balance between the two, you see. But a balance between the two means trusting in the universe, means trusting that the outcomes are meant to be the way they're meant to be, and that your ideologies and beliefs are not the overriding actions. They're not the overriding beliefs. You see, the way ego works is ego chooses to say in all situations that you are right. And because you desire to be right, it closes your mind to the possibility that your view of right is co-opted by your programming. Now, we've talked about programming in the past. We've talked about how your perception of things is created by many things. The way you were raised, by the type of media you choose to consume, by the friends group that you have, by all of these things. And what you have to understand is, again, it's perception. So you're perceiving life in a particular manner. And when you begin to understand that that's what's happening and you're perceiving life in a particular manner, what you then begin to understand is you can change your perception of life. When you understand that you can change your perception of life, that is where you start to get true power over self and sovereignty. Because that is where you can choose to say, no more. What I currently believe is not serving me, and I choose now to change what I currently believe in order for my belief system to serve me, rather than I serve my belief system. very important concept to grasp. Because if you don't grasp that concept, then you don't create and have the ability to create beautiful and positive outcomes in your life. So, again, as I mentioned in the next video, we're going to talk about how perception actually changes your past and your future. We're going to talk a little bit about why that's important and why that's something that you should consider on your journey. But what say you? How do you feel about that? How about those examples? Do you feel like those examples give you a better perspective of why good or bad is more of a perception, of why good or bad is just an egoic way of attaching to something, and why there really is no good or bad, there just is? As always, if you enjoy this content, please like, share, and subscribe. I am truly grateful. And until I talk to you again, peace, love, light. Hope you have the most amazing day.